Robbery is one of the oldest and most serious crimes known to law, and it continues to affect societies around the world, from small local communities to major urban centers. In simple terms, robbery is defined as the unlawful taking of property from another person through the use of force, intimidation, or threat. What makes robbery distinct from theft or burglary is the element of violence, or the fear of violence directed at a victim, a bear. In the eyes of the law, robbery is not only a crime against property, but also a crime against the person, because it violates both ownership rights and personal safety. Under United States federal and state laws, robbery is classified as a felony, which means it carries severe penalties, often including lengthy prison sentences. According to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, robbery is categorized as a violent crime, alongside offenses such as murder, assault, and rape. The seriousness of robbery stems from the fact that it combines both violence and theft, creating physical danger and psychological trauma for victims. To understand robbery fully, we need to look at its key legal elements. First, the unlawful taking or attempted taking of property. Second, the property must belong to another person. Third, the act must involve force, threat, or intimidation. And fourth, the intent to permanently deprive the victim of that property. All four elements must exist for an act to be considered robbery under criminal law. If any element is missing, for example, if there is no force or threat, it may be classified as a lesser offense, like theft or larceny instead. Different jurisdictions may vary in their definitions, but these basic principles remain consistent across most legal systems. For instance, under the Model Penal Code, robbery occurs when in the course of committing a theft, a person inflicts serious bodily injury upon another, threatens another with immediate injury, or commits or threatens to commit any first or second-degree felony. The penalties for robbery depend on several factors, including the level of violence, whether a weapon was used, the amount of property taken, and whether anyone was injured or killed. In many U.S. states, robbery with a deadly weapon, known as armed robbery, is punishable by decades in prison, and in some cases, it can even lead to life imprisonment. Aggravating factors like firing a gun, attacking a victim, or robbing a bank raise the severity of the charge, while mitigating factors like cooperation with law enforcement or lack of prior criminal history might slightly reduce sentencing. But one of the most famous forms of robbery is bank robbery, which falls under federal jurisdiction because banks are federally insured institutions. The Federal Bank Robbery Act makes it a federal crime to take or attempt to take property, money, or valuables from a bank by force, intimidation, or extortion. Federal prosecutors handle these cases, and penalties can include up to 20 years in prison or more if a weapon is used or if someone is harmed. Another notable form is highway robbery, also known as robbery from the person or mugging, which involves robbing individuals in public places. These crimes often occur on streets, in parking lots, or in other open spaces where victims may be caught off guard. Modern forms of robbery have evolved with technologies. Cyber or digital robberies can involve online extortion, threats, or even virtual theft, using intimidation in cyberspace, though these crimes may fall under different statutes. Legally speaking, robbery can be categorized into degrees. First-degree robbery typically involves the use of a deadly weapon or causes serious bodily harm. Second-degree robbery may involve threats or minor injuries without weapons. Third-degree robbery, recognized in some states, usually involves minimal force or threat. Sentences range widely from a few years to life imprisonment, depending on the degree and jurisdiction. For example, in California, first-degree robbery can lead to up to 9 years in state prison, while in New York, first-degree robbery can result in 25 years or more. Apart from imprisonment, convicted robbers may also face fines, restitution to victims, probation, and mandatory counseling or rehabilitation programs. In addition, robbery convictions often carry long-term consequences beyond prison time. A felony record can affect employment opportunities, housing applications, and even voting rights in some states. It also impacts immigration status, potentially leading to deportation for non-citizens. From a legal defense perspective, several strategies can be used in robbery cases. Common defenses include mistaken identity, lack of intent, duress, or the claim that no force or intimidation was used. Sometimes, Defendants argue they were forced or threatened into participating in a robbery. This is known as a duress defense. In other cases, the prosecution might not have enough evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant committed the crime. Surveillance footage, eyewitness testimony, and forensic evidence often play crucial roles in robbery trials. But these can also be subject to human error or misinterpretation. Another key legal distinction lies between robbery and burglary. While both involve theft, burglary is generally defined as unlawfully entering a building with the intent to commit a crime inside, whether or not anyone is present, and whether or not force is used. Robbery, on the other hand, always involves direct confrontation with a person and the use or threat of violence. Understanding this difference is critical because burglary is typically considered a property crime, while robbery is a violent crime. Historically, robbery laws have existed since ancient times. In early English common law, robbery was considered a capital offense punishable by death, and the definition focused heavily on the use of force. Over time, the punishment evolved as societies developed more structured criminal justice systems. Today, while execution is no longer a penalty for robbery in democratic nations, it remains one of the most heavily penalized non-homicide crimes. In recent years, law enforcement agencies have implemented advanced methods to prevent and solve robbery cases. Surveillance systems, DNA analysis, and digital tracking have made it harder for robbers to escape detection. Police departments also focus on community awareness programs to reduce risks and encourage citizens to report suspicious activity. From a social perspective, robbery has deep psychological impacts on victims. Many victims experience trauma, anxiety, and fear long after the event. Victim advocacy groups play a key role in providing emotional and legal support to help them recover. Economically, robbery also contributes to insurance losses, higher security costs, and financial instability for businesses. Preventing robbery requires a multifaceted approach. On an individual level, people are encouraged to stay alert, avoid displaying valuables in public, and use well-lit routes when walking at night. Businesses can implement security cameras, silent alarms, and train staff to handle potential threats. Banks, jewelry stores, and retail outlets often use anti-theft technologies and time-locked safes to deter criminals. On a governmental level, strengthening the criminal justice system, improving social welfare, and addressing root causes like poverty, unemployment, and addiction are essential steps toward reducing robbery rates. Research shows that most robberies are committed by individuals seeking quick cash, often under financial pressure, or to support drug addiction. Thus, addressing socioeconomic issues can indirectly reduce such crimes. Education, job opportunities, and community development programs are proven to lower crime rates by giving at-risk individuals better life choices. The role of law enforcement remains vital in ensuring public safety. Police officers are trained to respond to robbery reports with caution, as suspects may be armed or dangerous. The primary goal during an active robbery situation is to protect lives and secure the area. Citizens are advised not to resist robbers during a crime because physical confrontation can escalate violence. Instead, it is safer to comply with demands, observe details about the suspect, and report everything to the police immediately after the incident. Prosecutors take robbery cases seriously because of the crime's violent nature. They must prove every element of the offense beyond a reasonable doubt, including the use of force or fear. Defense attorneys, on the other hand, work to challenge the credibility of witnesses, question evidence, and present alternative explanations. Judges consider all circumstances before sentencing, often guided by statutory ranges and sentencing guidelines. Some states offer parole or early release for good behavior, but violent offenders usually face longer terms before eligibility. In federal cases, mandatory minimum sentences apply if firearms are used, under laws like the Armed Career Criminal Act. In conclusion, robbery is not just an act of stealing, it's an assault on safety, trust, and social stability. The law treats it with utmost seriousness because it represents both economic and emotional harm. Understanding robbery from a legal perspective helps citizens recognize its gravity and the consequences it carries. It reminds us that behind every legal definition lies a human story, a victim who suffered fear, a society that seeks justice, and and a system designed to balance punishment with prevention. Ultimately, the best defense against robbery is awareness, education, and strong community cooperation. When people know their rights, understand the law, and support effective crime prevention measures, they contribute to creating a safer and more just society for everyone.